I'm so excited to tell you about the Kroger OptUp app. OptUp is your virtual assistant for healthier shopping. I've been using OptUp with my grocery shopping, and now I'm more mindful as I make food choices for my family at Kroger. What I love the most is how OptUp tracks my household score automatically based off what I'm purchasing at Kroger. OptUp also makes recommendations for healthier alternatives and nutrition facts of the foods we purchase. OptUp is very easy to use. Download it today in the App Store or Google Play. Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Okay, everyone, welcome back. It's another edition of the Produce Moms Podcast, and this is a really special edition because not only are we speaking with a woman that's doing work that matters the most, we're also speaking to one of my dear friends. So today's guest is Nikki Rodoni. She is the CEO and founder of Measure to Improve, which is a business that is producing sustainable solutions. Their mission at Measure to Improve is to help agricultural producers and processors measure, improve, and credibly promote their sustainability efforts. Work that's so important. So Nikki, just without further ado, warm welcome. Thank you for being here.
Lori, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it and admire the work that you're doing. So this is great.
It is great. Yeah. I mean, Nikki and I fangirl over her work, and she's like absolutely our biggest fan at the Produce Mom. So Nikki, thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for all that you do. And thanks for all your support of the Produce Moms. It's appreciated by me and my entire team.
Absolutely. I only wish that you were around when I was raising kids. My kids have all, flown the coop.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you know what? There's something for everyone. Like we say, there's a produce mom in all of us, right? So I know you're enjoying I know you enjoy what we do now. And yeah, I agree. It's been a lot of fun to build the work we do at the Produce Moms and see how that's affecting in a positive way so many of the households of our mom followers that have children at home. So thank you. All right. Well, Nikki, I definitely think we got to start at the very top here. Measure to Improve, your tagline on your website, producing sustainable solutions. The word sustainability is right there in the first sentence of your mission statement. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, sustainability is a word that until I met you, Nikki, I really didn't know exactly what it meant. So I'm sure that plenty of our listeners today are in the same boat. So how do you define it? What is sustainability?
So Lori, this is a great question. And thank you for asking, because quite honestly, back in 2007, when I stumbled accidentally upon sustainability, I had no idea what it meant either. And so going back, there are two really classic definitions that I often refer to, basically meeting the needs of the future without compromising future generations, or often referred to as triple bottom line or the 3 Ps. And so to take it a step further and simplify it, we define it at Measure to Improve as people, planet, and profit. Okay. You have to have all three to truly define sustainability.
Yeah, no doubt. And so that's obviously what you mean when you say 3 Ps, people, planet, profit.
Right. And I'd love to give you some examples of that, because usually that's the aha moment. So when we work with clients, that's the first thing we do when we walk in. We ask them, what does sustainability mean to you? And then we show them this Venn diagram that we've created with examples of each. So they asked me profitability. Does that mean we have to talk about, how much money we make? Absolutely not. It's just talking about how you're preparing to stay in business. Do you have a succession plan in place? Are you investing in new technology to become more efficient? Things like that. For people, it's really about how companies are taking care of their employees. It's not talking about how much they pay their employees. It's talking about or sharing the story in retention time. You know, if you have employees that have been with your company for a long time, that means you're a good company to work for. It's also about how you give back to the community in which you live and work in. And as you know, this industry is very generous. They just don't talk about it. And they never thought that it was important to talk about. But people appreciate, you know, the organizations, that they give back to. And that also builds brand loyalty and brand trust when you know that these companies are supporting certain organizations. And then finally, planet, the planet, this refers to about the environment. And sometimes people confuse sustainability as all about the environment, but really, truly, as I mentioned, to define something as sustainable, you have to include all three. And when I say planet, I'm talking about energy efficiencies, I'm talking about water, how companies are preserving this precious resource, land conservation, and finally waste. So how they're dealing with the waste and really taking responsibility for their environmental impact, measuring that and being able to tell that story along the way.
Yeah, that's really neat. And I think that I fall into that category of people who just assume that sustainability was about taking care of the planet, the environment specifically, and not really having that 360-degree understanding of what sustainability means with this triple bottom line, these 3 Ps. So in review, you guys, it's people, planet, and profit. And I love how you talked about each of those, Nikki, and helping folks understand that even in an industry as humble as agriculture, you can promote all 3 of those things in a way that simply just builds brand loyalty. It doesn't sound like you're bragging or anything along those lines. It's actually what people want to know. I mean, I've been looking at all the new food trends are coming out as we get closer to 2019, and sustainability is on almost all of the lists that I'm reading, whether it's in the form of packaging or in the form of, like mission-driven companies, stuff like that. So consumers want to know this stuff, no doubt. And the work you're doing is, it's a perfect example of, you've built an entire business around helping people improve and promote their sustainability efforts. So I guess really my next question for you, Nikki, is how did you know there was a need for this work?
Thank you for asking that. So when I first started out on this journey, like I said, I had no idea what sustainability meant. And I can remember this as if it were yesterday. It was back in 2007. I was working for a family business, vertically integrated. They grew, they processed, they packaged, and they came to me and they said, our customers are starting to ask what sustainability means. We need you to go figure that out. And I asked the owner of the company, I'm like, well, what does it mean to you? And he says, I have no idea. So fast forward, I started looking into what sustainability meant. I had to look outside the produce industry because this wasn't something this industry was really talking about. However, I have to say, the produce industry truly defines what sustainability means. We've been in business for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th generations, and we're still in business. To me, that is the true definition of sustainability. So I presented an idea to the company. I said, let me start a sustainability department. And several years after we had started, we had implemented, a waste reduction plan, counted our greenhouse gas emissions and reported those publicly. And the things that we were doing really resonated with our customers. And so then I started applying for awards and recognition because we had the data to back it up. And it just kind of, again, validated our efforts. And so when this started happening, other produce companies who had been asked about their sustainability program said, hey, can you help us out? We're really interested. And Lori, like you, I have this passion for the produce industry. So my whole approach is to keep this industry proactive. And I saw a need. And so that's when I started the business in 2014, just to help take that proactive approach.
So you started your business in 2014, and then, backpedaling on the timeline a little bit, you mentioned that when at your former employer, you guys were being asked by your customers. So being a vertically integrated grower, shipper, processor, that means your customers are the retailers.
Right. Retail and then food service operators, companies that buy for restaurant chains or retailers for grocery stores. So yeah, we were asked by them because
what year was that? Do you remember?
2007 was when I was first asked to help respond to these customer requests.
Yeah, and that was when the president of the company was like, well, I don't know what sustainability is. You figure it out.
Right. We know we're doing something. And then it also gave me an opportunity not only to respond to the buyers, but also it was an opportunity for the company to really take a look internally and save money, save resources. And then it created kind of a culture when we started telling the story, and people were really proud to work for a company that was doing all of these great things.
Oh, yeah. I imagine it did wonders for employee morale and your internal team culture. So you mentioned when you were reflecting on that you looked outside the produce industry. Where'd you look?
Well, Fortune 500 companies had been reporting, they called it CRS reports, corporate, and talking about their sustainability initiatives. I also looked at two companies in particular, Patagonia and Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. And I actually, Lori, picked up the phone and called Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and their director of sustainability had spent an hour on the phone, which gave me the courage to set really ambitious goals internally. And so I had to learn lessons learned outside and kind of create it or customize it for this industry. Yeah. And so we're still learning and we're building processes, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. So 2007, you guys were asked to, be forthcoming with your sustainability efforts. And then you became the director of sustainability. And that was shortly thereafter?
Yeah, I didn't become director of sustainability until 2009.
Okay, so you did a couple years of research then, or implementation, before you actually had a full program. And then you said Measure to Improve was founded 2014, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, those are some really magnificent milestones. And it also communicates that, passion like yours can move things pretty quickly, but it's also, at the same time, it's also a long game. That's a lot of commitment for you. And here you are, we're on the heels of 2019 and you're still going strong. I mean, your business is growing and it's really exciting, Nikki.
Thank you. Well, you understand passion, Lori, and I might not have all of the answers, but I have a lot of passion about what I do.
Yeah, it'll instinctively fuel what you do. All right, so let's talk with the produce moms being, an effort and a resource and a community of primarily households. Let's talk a little bit about how the work you do at Measure to Improve actually affects the end consumer of the fresh produce brands that you're working with, the households of our listeners. How does the work that you all are doing at Measure to Improve affect households and consumers?
So we're not necessarily doing all of the work for these produce companies. We're just helping guide them, tell the story, track the data so that they can credibly promote and tell the story. So really for us, it's about helping these companies and helping the industry tell the story that resonates with the environmental and the socially conscious consumers. We all want to know where our produce comes from. And so what we do, please rest assured that this industry is not only growing the highest quality and the safest produce, but they do it with integrity. And that story, Lori, has never really been told. So hopefully, and like you said, and you nailed it, it's a long-term commitment. We don't tell the story overnight. You saw everything that falls under the category of sustainability. So it takes time to build these practices. And so hopefully, people will feel confident and, appreciate. That's what I want to help the average customer really appreciate how hard it is to get this food to their table, but do it with integrity. And that's, basically built in to their produce, but we just haven't been telling that story. So hopefully that story will get told, and we'll be able to build that bridge or that gap between consumers and the growers.
Yeah. And that vision of being the bridge really kind of brings me to my next thought here. Obviously, Nikki, your work is focused on fresh produce, growers, shippers, processors. What does that focus and that intent of the work that you're doing at Measure to Improve, what does that mean for the future and sustainability programs looking forward?
So right now, sustainability really seems to be a differentiator for the companies that have taken the proactive approach, really committed to telling their story, tracking that data. It's no more about sharing what practices you're doing, but it's now showing the progress that you're making. It's still really a voluntary effort, but I think that soon enough, it's going to be the cost of doing business, and it's going to be a requirement to do business with large retailers and food service operators. Yeah. So it's either going to be dictated by regulatory mandates, buyer demands, or consumer requests. And so what I hope, and this is what I hope, that these big buyers and really come together and agree on a definition, agree on metrics, so that the story, no matter who you're growing or who your supplier is consistent. So we're all measuring the same, we're all telling the same story, but not exactly the same, because sustainability is really customized to each company. But I think it's going to be the cost of doing business in the future. So let's stay ahead of it and take a proactive approach and really tell our story before it gets dictated in a way that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned zero waste when we were talking about your definition of sustainability, and that is another one of those words. I mean, it's kind of like sustainability. It's kind of a buzzword. You hear about it a lot, and I really don't think that everyone truly understands what it means. So, I'd love for you to define zero waste.
So what I always like to start with, because it's a little ambitious to set a goal of zero waste, and you're talking to the CEO of a company and say, I'd like to take your company to zero waste. And they kind of take a look. But what it doesn't mean that a company will not generate any waste, because there are certain materials that can't be recycled or reused yet, like gloves, for instance, and hair nets, things like that. Yeah. But what zero waste is, it means that 90% of all materials that a company generates will be diverted from the landfill, diverted by either source separating your garbage from your recycling materials, and then even taking that a step further and separate your recycling materials like your cardboard and your plastics. And then in the produce industry, Lori, for the processors, we generate what we call a lot of coals, and coals are the organic, right? Yeah, coals are the byproduct. It's for it's either the tops and tails.
Sure. So examples would be like peels of different fruits, and like if you're doing watermelon chunked, it's the watermelon rind. If you're peeling garlic cloves, it's that paper-like chaff that is around the garlic. So that all falls under the category of, you said coals, is that correct? C-U-L-S?
Coals. Yeah, coals. And it's called organic waste material. It doesn't mean that it's organic, but it's just the organic waste that's not fit for human consumption, basically. But it's got a lot of value to it. So the coals, we have to figure out a place for that. And typically it either goes to feed cows, or it goes to create compost, which is a soil amendment. So anyway, it's 90% diversion from the landfill. And it focuses on the hierarchy of reduce what comes into your facility or your farming operation, reuse, and then you recycle. So that's basically what zero waste means.
That's cool. Yeah, I love that. And I actually was exposed to it because I was formerly employed by IF&P Foods back in the day. And I worked at Indianapolis Fruit Company, as most of our listeners know, but the sister company, Piazza Produce, which focused on food service, they were they were one of the first in food service wholesale distribution that was certified zero waste. And I know, Nikki, you have developed a great kinship and camaraderie with the sustainability expert there. It was really neat as an employee seeing that come together.
Yeah, and I have to say, Lori, Piazza Produce, Scott Latoka, has been such a great reference for me when I've helped our companies. We've helped 3 facilities here in Monterey County, the first facilities in this area, become zero waste certified. And it took great commitment and a lot of hard work, but we've earned that certification seal. Yeah. So I'm really proud of the companies that committed to this, the employees, and it's not easy, but with help like Piazza Produce, we made it happen.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, shout out to Scott. I hope we'll make sure he hears this episode. Yeah, Nikki, this has been really inspiring for me to listen to you share all the stories and dive a little bit deeper into what you do and why you do it. Defining all of these key components of sustainability. And as I'm listening to him, I'm like, man, how can folks like, me, our listeners, how can we be more sustainable at home? Do you, as the queen of sustainability, do you have any tips for folks with at-home use?
Yeah, I have to practice, obviously, what I preach. And so start out simple, do away with plastic bottles and get your reusable mugs, bring your shopping bag, your reusable shopping bag to the grocery store. I compost at home, my scraps. I have a worm bin out back. It's just the little things. And I always reference there's a great website called Earth 911. And I love this website because they provide practical ideas to get you started. And it's just about educating yourself on what you could do in your area. And just have a mindset that, pay attention when you're doing your dishes, brushing your teeth, turn that water off. Mm-hmm. But don't try to do it all at once. It's not easy, but it's important that we all commit to taking that environmentally responsible attitude.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you said it's Earth 911 is the website?
Yes.
Okay, we'll add that to the show notes. So I don't know if you're able to, talk about some of the work you're doing. I imagine a lot of what you do has to be done, conducted under non-disclosure due to, really getting involved with some of the practices of your clients. But can you share with us any of the things you are working on right now, like what you consider one of your top goals or priorities at Measure to Improve?
My top priority right now is really to bridge that gap between buyers and consumers and growers, and really talk about what metrics that we can all use to fast forward our efforts along the way. Defining sustainability, the way we talk about it. Some of the things that we've helped facilitate, we're doing a on-farm pilot project for a large grower so that eventually they can launch it to all of their suppliers, making it easy. And it's not easy, but once you're committed, right. And it's just teaching them and developing a how-to approach and really what falls under sustainability. And sometimes when we start talking about that, Lori, it's the aha moment. I've had farmers, when we define it, say, well, heck, I've been doing that all my life. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize what sustainability meant. So it's not this overwhelming burden. It's just building upon what they're already doing. So it's just getting that message out, helping the industry take a proactive approach. Our waste reduction initiatives are great. We're helping companies in the area of social compliance, going above and beyond the code of conduct. And how do you really track and document that in a way that could be credibly marketed so that we do build brand trust and again, extend that appreciation for where your food comes from.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. Yeah. And, I want to also reiterate to all of our listeners, one of my favorite things about the work Nikki does is it's very data driven. That's even captured in the name of her business, Measure to Improve. So this is not, anecdotal efforts. These are efforts that are calculated, they're measured, and then they're using that data to make, the improvements that can be tracked. And that's really important. So, Nikki, like I've said several times in today's interview, I want to thank you so much for the work that you do. I mean, it really is work that matters the most. It's making a huge difference in the way our food is grown here in the United States, and the way that people do business, and the way that they prioritize, people, planet, and profit. And that is, it's quite inspiring. And the timeline of your efforts, starting all the way back in 2007 to where you've come today, if that doesn't make your heart sing, I don't know what will. It's really quite an incredible and impressive story and journey. So that being said, I mean, where can our listeners go to learn more?
Well, you could go to our website at measuretoimprove.com. And, that's the best place to learn about what we do.
Yeah. And then we also have, you guys, I will say Nikki's Facebook page is also really inspiring. So find Measure to Improve on the Facebook page, and we'll link Nikki's website, Earth 911, the Facebook page. We'll put all that right into the show notes, so you guys don't have to, struggle to find it. So it's Nikki. Thank you so much for your time, and our guests always get the last word on this show, and the opportunity to share their closing thoughts. So I'm going to throw the mic back to you to say goodbye and share any closing thoughts.
Lori, first of all, thank you so much for sharing my story and helping your listeners, really understand what sustainability means. That's really important. But I also would like to say sustainability starts with a good business case that translates into environmental benefits. And it's something that benefits all of us. So thank you again for what you do. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story, and continue doing a great job.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.